What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. It's week 6. I'm back in the saddle. I'm happy to be here, and all I know is I've got a lot to catch up on because I've been on vacation. So I'm going to be basically, again, just one of you asking JJ questions, figuring it out, okay, I've got Brock Bowers. What do I do? I don't have as much Cam Scatterboo. What do I do? What do I do, JJ? Those are the questions we are going to get answered here next on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, sponsored by DraftKings. All right, welcome in to Late Round Fantasy Football Show, sponsored by DraftKings. David Kitchen here alongside JJ. JJ, how's it going?
Must be nice. Must be nice to just go to San Diego and hang out with your family and just have a great time while I'm over here just getting destroyed by rest of season rankings questions.
Mega tilting. I told you earlier that, I did. I had a great time in San Diego. And this will be in the newsletter coming up, by the way. If you haven't subscribed for the newsletter, do so. But there is just something about getting outside and being with the people and understanding, hey, they're one of us as well. Monday night in the line for ice cream, I'm looking at my phone. I needed 30 yards for Xavier Worthy. And I was playing against Isaiah Pacheco.
Right, and this game was going on at like 2 p.m. your time at this point.
Yeah, no, it's this is the fourth quarter, so it's like 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Honestly,
nice
primetime games West Coast is not bad.
Not bad at all. And I hear this guy, two guys behind me with he has 2 daughters as well. And he's like, yes. And I looked back and I was like, fantasy? He's like, yeah, Kelsey just caught it. I just won my matchup. I'm like, awesome. And I didn't say like, hey, JJ, I worked for him. I didn't say that.
You could just say, do you know me, David Kitchen?
No. Because
do you know who I am?
Obviously he didn't when I just like looked at him and like point to late round. So no, I didn't. But then after we got ice cream, I go to the market and there's this European fellow behind the counter. And he's like, oh, come on. We're watching this ridiculous end of the Jags-Chiefs game. Just a ridiculous end.
It's a great game.
Whoever put that on the quad box, they know what
they're doing. You did put that. All right. You sort of redeemed yourself.
Right. And so he's rooting for his team defense. And I'm just like, it was just 2 situations within 30 minutes that just reminded me fantasy football is for everybody. And we love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's nice that you get to meet and see people who play fantasy football. Instead, I went to the dentist yesterday and the dental hygienist was like, oh, are you working today? What do you do for a living? And I was like, yeah, like I podcast and I do that kind of thing. I always say now my go-to is just to say that I'm a podcaster. It's easier. Yeah. It's more all encompassing. And she was like, oh, like what kind of, like what's your topic that you focus on? And I was like, fantasy football. And then she's like, oh, I've never, really played fantasy football. And that's fine. Like I don't need everyone to play fantasy football. But then there's like the questions and there's like so much depth to talking to somebody who's never played fantasy football and doing that while your mouth is wide open and you're getting your teeth cleaned. It was a lot. I mean, she was great, super nice woman, but like I like, how do you even begin to explain? Yeah. And I think I did an okay job, but it was, I'd much rather, come across somebody who already plays. And I'm like, yeah, I like, that's what I do for a living. But the problem is when you find strangers that are like that, they're fix my lineup. Can you fix my lineup for me? Who should I add and who should I drop? They go in that direction. Then
you give general advice, just, help them.
I was like, well, are you gonna be a patron or what's the
no? Speaking of patron, JJ, and your love for QR codes, cool new feature that we have right now. Look at that, bam! Look at that QR code top left. You scan that right now if you're watching on YouTube. That's going to take you right to our Patreon where you can become a patron.
What is this? There's a StreamYard logo in it too.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was putting stuff together and I noticed there's a QR code section. So you put in
really well branded there, Kitchen.
Bam. Bam.
Well branded.
Yeah. I just wanted to show you the feature because I know how much you love the QR code. Just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, DraftKings, for sponsoring this show. If you haven't already, go make a deposit on DraftKings, get your free ticket. And listen, we got NHL right now.
We do.
I got a neighbor sending me a screenshot that he won a lot of money basically on goal scoring parlays.
Nice.
And I'm like, I didn't really believe him when he said he made a lot of money last year on NHL, but he did. He showed me another screenshot. So there you go. And with that being said, JJ, it is week 6. We got a bye week. We got lots of injuries. So let's just get right into it.
Today's fantasy news.
All right. The first one, breaking kind of. If you are a Cincinnati Bengals fan, you had maybe a moment of happiness with Joe Flacco, aka old JJ.
Yeah.
Into town.
Yeah.
But now we've got a report that Jamar Chase is sick. How sick do you have to be on a Friday?
That's exactly
Sunday.
That's exactly what my reaction is. He's got a couple days. He's going to be fine. Hopefully it's not like hardcore flu, because sometimes that can linger for, a few days. I'm talking, when I say linger, I mean you can't just take something before the game to give yourself 3 hours. I mean, you got to be in bed, you can't do anything else but lay in bed when you have that. So, I'm hoping that he's able to play. I can't remember the last time there was a sickness and illness outside of whenever the pandemic was in full force.
Yeah.
When players were missing time due to illness. Do you they're on the injury report every week. Someone's got an illness, because that's what happens. We all get sick. And I can't remember an instance where someone missed time. We had the Bijan Robinson migraine game, but migraines are a lot different than being sick, like a stomach bug or a cold of some sort, or the flu. Migraines are because I get migraines, or I used to get them a lot. I had one a few weeks ago, and I get some neurological symptoms that's not fun, and you don't know where you are. So, it's just crazy. It's awful. That's different. That was the Bijan Robinson thing, but I expect Jamar Chase to still play.
Okay. You already mentioned in kind of the mailbag about Joe Flacco, but we had a comment by Chum. Says, Bengals fan here. Flacco is not going to survive with their offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking about that all week on the show. I'm very, very nervous about Flacco at the line, but I think that my mailbag answer is more in line with just how I generally feel. It's probably a little bit of an upgrade over Jake Browning. I just don't want to get crazy, because I think that people, equate Joe Flacco to Jameis Winston, to, that then equating to a lot of production for pass catchers and stuff. And it's just not always the case. And you need quarterbacks to still be good in real football to have that stability, in fantasy football.
Both MJ and Nick mentioning that we had a JSN sick report a few weeks ago, and he crushed it in week 3. All right, next news item: Rico.
What could this be about?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Suave. Rico Dowdle in a revenge game, and we had news this morning that Chuba Hubbard is definitely out this week.
I had this conversation with Adam Hutchison on Perspectives, which I think, you guys should listen to. It's a little bit different because he's a doctor of physical therapy. So we talk more about injury and his process with injuries. And I think that you should hear from the Twitter docs perspective on stuff before you pass judgment on those people. It's just really weird to me how people act towards the Twitter docs. But the conversation got brought up about Chuba and his calf and such. And one of the things that I think is really important here with this Chuba Hubbard injury, and this goes for, Tyrone Tracy is another example of this, right? This goes for any player who is clearly not an elite talent, but is very good, and we're drafting them on the potential of volume, right? Chuba's a more obvious example because he was being drafted because it's yeah, of course, he's going to be the RB1. And I think Chuba's good, right? But this speaks to the fragility of the running back position. And what I'm getting to is that I think when Chuba's back, we're still going to see a decent amount of Rico in this backfield. Like, I don't think that Chuba's going to go back to a 70%, 80% backfield share. I think we're in a 60-40, maybe even 55-45 kind of situation. And that's what we run into when we're drafting and rostering, less legitimate assets, right? I brought up Tyrone Tracy because, I like Tyrone Tracy as a player. I think that he's good. And we didn't really know what we had in Cam Scadaboo. But when a guy goes down like that, and then another player comes in and plays well, there's then a higher likelihood that that player who went down is no longer able to get their job back. If that happened with Christian McCaffrey, you think he's not going to get his job back? Do you think that some of these higher end running backs aren't going to step back? If Derrick Henry gets hurt, you don't think he's going to come back and see a huge workload on the ground? I mean, that's just, or Bijan Robinson, even with Tyler Algier there, this is how it goes with running backs in particular, and why it's a more fragile position oftentimes in fantasy football than what we see at wide receiver, where it's just a little bit more talent driven. So I think Rico Dowdle's an RB1 this weekend. Fantastic matchup. We'll get to it in a second in the main event. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is it's not good news for Chuba, not just this week, but longer term too.
Yeah, for sure. Someone said if Miles Sanders is back this week, it's like the double revenge game.
Yeah.
Where Sanders is playing against his old team and Dow's playing against his old
team.
But
good for Carolina for actually getting rid of a player who doesn't come back to just destroy the league like they've done with Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
Exactly. Darnold's been just incredible.
Baker's been incredible. They're both insane right now.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting. This is an aside. We're about to talk about Baker Mayfield, so it's a good segue. But Baker talking about that clip of him talking trash.
Oh,
I think
amazing.
you actually posted it.
Of course,
he said
Baker is so good for the NFL, and he is he's awesome. I love Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I used to love those commercials that he had in the stadium. I've always liked Baker too. Those commercials did get a little old. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure,
His
yeah.
house commercials. Yeah. But he was saying, like, in Cleveland, they would have said he was like immature if he did that.
He's
now it's like he's got that dog in him.
It's true, though.
Yeah, it is.
It's 100% true. For anyone who didn't see it, Baker was yapping with the in the tunnel in Seattle with his fan. And at the end of the game, after they won, he was running off the field and he gave it like, he just, what was this? What didn't he have like a certain quote or like told you or something like that? Like something along those lines.
Yeah.
But he went back to that fan and he let him know like, yeah, I did that,
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's awesome. You're getting the fans involved. Like Baker's just a regular dude, just a bro who's going out there playing football, and he is playing out of his mind. Like, he's so good. And it's awesome to see. It really is. Even as someone who was low on Baker in fantasy football entering the season, I don't care. I talked about that in the mailbag episode and stuff. Like, whatever I felt in the preseason from a fantasy perspective, number one, has nothing to do with how I feel about these players in real life. But then number two, like, I can recognize that Baker's playing really, really well, playing better than I thought he would play. He's been great, and I'm rooting for him. Not only that, but I have a ton of Emeka Egbuka, and I need Baker to keep playing.
You need Baker for those games. Yeah, they're 4-1.
But they could easily be 0-5 is the crazy thing. Like that, like the way that their games have gone down. Maybe not 0-5, maybe 1-4, but like the way their games have gone down, all of them have been nail biters. It's so fun to watch. He's just a gamer, and you got to respect that.
They've got a fun game coming up next week, and it is against the Lions, who are also 4-1. But Goff, a guy that you said was going to have some touchdown regression, who has in that same category. In Baker
technically has a lower touchdown rate right now, and he does have. I'm pretty sure he has fewer fantasy points year over year. So like, it's not totally wrong right now, but it's not. I mean, he's still very usable. He's still a mid-range QB1 and still good in fantasy.
All right, Godwin's bone's still hurting him. So, shin bones take a long time to heal. Apparently, he's out. I put Godwin for Mr. Egg.
Yeah, big news. Can you widen that a little bit, by the way, the screen a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It for some reason got shrunk a little bit. But no, Igbuka, I think, is in store for a lot of volume. I do think, since we're talking about this, I should call it out. I talked on the sleeper show this week that Godwin was kind of an interesting sleeper. Now, I'm not going to be, I had him as like a high variance, highly volatile buy a couple weeks ago, just because he saw 10 targets, he only caught 3 of them, and if he continues to see that, and if he does get healthier, then things will go well. And obviously, he hasn't gotten healthier, and so that didn't work out if you went out and got Godwin. But it was more of like send a bench player for Godwin and see if you can get something out of it. I'm concerned about Godwin long-term for obvious reasons, just because it's apparently not the exact same injury, but it's around the area where it all went down, with his ankle last year. And so, I talked on the sleeper show that Godwin had a really good slot matchup against San Francisco. And the way that I kind of see this going and playing out this weekend, and this is only for deep leagues, but I think it's still interesting. You're going to probably see Godwin and Sterling Shepard in 2 wide receiver sets. Sterling Shepard, the Buccaneers are weird with their slot deployment. Like, they have a lot of slot guys and they'll just throw them on the outside and they don't really care. Even Igbuka was someone who people thought was going to be more of a slot player in the NFL. But like Jalen McMillan and even Sterling Shepard, hasn't been a pure slot for Tampa Bay. So I think Shepard will be the wide receiver too. And then you look down and it's probably gonna be Tez Johnson as the slot player, or mostly playing the slot, because he's not much of a perimeter guy, even though last week we did see him line up on the outside. But there's a really good slot matchup for Tampa Bay. And Tez Johnson, he's really undersized and he doesn't have a ton of speed, but he's incredibly shifty. And it's a really good offense, and this could be a good offensive environment. I think Tez Johnson is a really interesting deep sleeper this week. Someone who like that. Oh, by the way, that league, we have to talk about 2 things really quick. Can we talk about 2 things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to want to talk about the big thing?
Oh, we're going to talk about 2 things really quick. So
Okay.
Tez Johnson
Right.
is a sleeper. Okay. And I'm actually starting him in that league that I talked about last week, where I started Theo Johnson, Chigakonkwo, who else? I mean, it was just like bad player after bad player. And I mentioned on the show, what's his name from Washington? Chris Moore. He scored 0. He almost scored a touchdown though. Guys, I won that matchup. So eat it. I told you I would win that matchup. But the other thing we have to talk about is that last week on the show, I brought up that I was going to win Scott Fishbowl, right? As a joke. Like, I'm not going to win SFB. There's like thousands and thousands of teams. But I say that, and then I was talking about how my projection was crazy and how Nakua and Christian McCaffrey both had really good Thursday night games. Guys, I scored the most points in all of Scott Fishbowl last week.
There's like 10,000 teams.
Yeah, like I literally had the number 1 scoring team. And the crazy thing is I started Woody Marks over Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. I could have had like 20, 25 more points.
Yeah, you said you quote tweeted because they tag all the accounts as far as the top scoring lineups.
Yeah,
and you
Scott
quote tweeted with all I can think about is starting Woody Marks over.
Yeah, because I needed people to know that I had Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt on the bench.
That it was like a double like dig for people. Like, I'm bragging not just in my lineup scored the most points, but also that I could have scored.
And guess
more.
what? Guess what? Right now, I'm sitting with a 366 point projection because I had Cam Scattaboo last night.
Oh gosh. And I thought you were also going to possibly bring up the third thing, and that is, I mentioned in a newsletter last week that I was playing you in our dynasty.
What a great week! All right, yeah, let's talk about this.
I was playing you in our dynasty league, which I actually have. Igbuka,
you were undefeated. I say were.
I was undefeated. I scored the second highest points in the league, and still didn't get within 30 points of JJ's team.
Yeah, I had some weird players going off in that. Best ball team. Yeah.
It's a best ball dynasty super flex tight end premium league. So
yeah,
it can get weird.
You start 2 tight ends in that league.
2 tight ends, yes.
So it's even more tight end premium.
Yeah, exactly. So it is. It was quite the week for you. Congrats.
Thank you.
Back to the news now.
Yeah, let's go back to the news. I just had to throw guys, for real, the Scott Fishbowl, the Scott Fishbowl thing was it's insane when you think about it, right? Like, I talked about this on Living the Stream with Denny, and I was like, it's crazy that it just so happened to be the same week that I joked about winning Scott Fishbowl is the same week that I scored the most points in Scott Fishbowl. It's just crazy.
Also, before we get on to the next piece of news, I have people in the chat clock pressing me because I agreed to join this late round fantasy basketball league, which I haven't joined a fantasy basketball season long league in like 5 or 6 years, maybe longer than that. I used to play DFS all the time, but I was like, yeah, I'll do this for you guys. And now I'm getting everyone, you don't have time for a show. You got to make your pick. And I looked, I've got 8 hours to make a pick.
Oh, come on, people.
Yeah. Try to disrupt the flow of the show.
Yeah.
So they can get on their, there's nothing worse than a clock presser. All right.
You see, El also said 2 tight ends is what I call the late round fantasy football show.
Nice. He must work out. Okay. Ravens nevermore, ? Lamar Jackson. It looks like he's going to be out again this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to see a negative game script for that Baltimore offense. That's my reaction. It might not be like horrifically bad for Zay Flowers. Like, I don't think that this injury is like as bad as it could be, hypothetically. But he didn't have that much touchdown upside, like a crazy amount of touchdown upside, just given the way they deploy him in the red zone to begin with this year. I know he started off the season really hot. But not having Lamar there obviously lessens that. The Derrick Henry stuff is really brutal. I mean, this is Derrick Henry is in a really bad spot right now.
It reminded me of 2 years ago with the Titans when teams would just cloud the box.
Yeah,
and right.
And I don't remember specifically what would happen with, like, I know that they would throw in, because I guess it was Spears a rookie that year. And they would throw Spears onto the field, and like have him be like their negative game script back. But Justice Hill is like even more so of that kind of player. And that just makes this game script situation for Baltimore even that much more difficult for Derrick Henry. So if you're playing Henry this weekend, which you probably have to, but if you're, unless you like lucked into you have like Scadaboo as like your RB3 or something like that. But if you're playing Derrick Henry this weekend, you just got to cross your fingers that the first half is decent for him. And because there's a very real chance that the Rams are just leading big in this game.
Okay. I don't even think that Tyjae Spears was a thing 3 years ago when he was with the Titans. Checking right now, because I think he came up last year with Pollard.
No, but they would still use him. They would still use him whenever negative game scripts would start to hit in 20,
as far as Derrick Henry, yes.
I mean, like especially like even down the stretch, like during his rookie year, he was getting more and more looks. But like you can see, like his receiving totals were not bad as a rookie. Yeah. Like they used him in that role, and that's the Justice Hill equivalent. But Hill is just more experienced, and the team like has him as a very concrete part of this offense.
Tyjae Spears was a rookie. My apologies.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, I've got Justice Hill as like I'm having to start him in the chopped late round league that we're in. You told me not to spend.
There are worse desperation plays.
Yeah, I had Amar and Hampton on that team too. I've got Christian McCaffrey, but you told me not to spend any money, and now I am like on the bubble of getting chopped.
It's fine.
You got chopped last week, so we're good there.
In guillotine leagues, you have to play probability, and now there's still 13 teams left. Like you have a 1 in 13 chance. That means you have a 12 and 13 chance of moving on. Yeah. And unless your team is just complete trash, you should take those odds.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Whew, the cards, boy, that's that whole instance last week, me tagging the ballers and saying, sorry, your team sucks.
Yeah,
was like cathartic for me because that should have been the Titans.
I mean, Cardinals fans have to know that they're just dust.
Yeah,
like that team is just not it.
Yeah, like almost as a Titans fan, I wanted them to lose still.
Yeah,
because we're on, we're already to the 2026 draft there in Pittsburgh. So, but now you've got Jacoby Brissett, who could be possibly playing for Kyler Murray, who's dealing with a foot issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like from a fantasy perspective, Obviously, Kyler is an upgrade over Brissett, and I think Kyler's a better player. Like people give Kyler like such a hard time. I don't think he's like, bottom 5 starter in the league type of player. Is he top 15? I think that's when you start to get into the discussion a little bit for Kyler. So this is an obvious downgrade. I just joked in my commentary saying that is Brissett a downgrade. Now I will say I don't know if Brissett would be that big of a downgrade for Marvin Harrison Jr. if we're being honest. There's an out here where he's hyper targeting Marvin Harrison Jr. instead of Trey McBride. Like there's an out here where he feels more comfortable doing that. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a 20% target share this year. Like he's not doing anything special. And so this could be okay enough for him.
Okay, Brock Bowers is making me sad. Someone who had a lot of him in best ball, got him in my home league, stayed away in other redraft leagues. But just the fact that like he might not be 100%, maybe even this season.
Yeah, that's what saying. Adam Hutchinson did not sound very confident about Bowers, like just bouncing back and just being himself. And that definitely scares me. I actually don't have Bowers in any of my main season long leagues. It's so I don't, from like a management standpoint, I'm trying to think of like my own, like how I would be handling it. I mean, obviously you're just benching, but in streaming, I think Michael Mayer is someone that you could conservatively pick up and just say, okay, if Bowers is out, I'm going to play Michael Mayer, kind of go from there. He's a talented player, doesn't have the best matchup in the world this week. I don't know how pass heavy Vegas is going to be either against Tennessee, but yeah, I mean, it's a really unfortunate situation because I Bowers healthy is fine. He's obviously going to be, tight end 1 in fantasy, but I don't know if we're going to see that rest of the season. I think that we have to, at this point, like assume that he's going to be out for a handful of weeks still and just kind of go from there.
Yeah. He went from day to day to now saying week to week. They have a bye upcoming. I think week 8 is their bye. So I almost want them to sit him this week, sit him next week, have the bye week, and then see how he feels after that.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right. Next, we have a thigh from Manungai.
A little fun one.
Yeah. A little new injury. I hope you're talking about the pun and not the injury. Yeah. But we have Kyle Manungai popping up on the injury report with a thigh issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say Roshan season.
Yes, please.
As my headline.
Yes.
But I do want to caution and say that they're playing on Monday night, so it's a day later for them, right? So like him missing on Thursday is like him missing on Wednesday, which is usually nothing. I don't know if he missed today or not. But even if he did, it's still not it. Like Friday is not the same for a Monday night team than it is for a Sunday team. I mean, I think that if Manungai misses, they're probably going to just give Roshan like the Manungai role, and DeAndre Swift will more or less just see the same role that he's played. I think they need to just give Roshan more work to see what he's about and see if he can spark and do something for that offense and for that run game, because the run game's been pretty atrocious. I said it from the start, from a prospecting standpoint, I was fine with throwing darts Manungai's way because he was so cheap. Like, it's not like we were elevating Manungai as like a second round rookie pick or like a single digit round best ball pick. So I was throwing darts, don't get me wrong, but his overall profile was not the best. And so, I also am just not like overly enthusiastic about him as a player. I think that he could be like an RB3 type if like volume works his way. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with the Bears backfield.
Okay, we have the Niners injury sitch going on. You mentioned on the podcast dropping today a little bit about it. Sounds like Juwan Jennings could possibly be back. He will not have Purdy probably as his quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one downside of this is that, like, what if the Kendrick Bourne game last week was just as much driven by Mac Jones as it was like Bourne in the game plan and stuff, and they have a history and all that kind of stuff.
Patriots,
yeah. So there is that with Bourne, but I just think that Juwan Johnson. Actually, I'm gonna get to this in the main event. Juwan Johnson, he has opportunity this weekend, and I'm excited to see that opportunity.
Okay. Also, Kittle could be back in as early as next week.
Yeah, which would be great.
They're saying.
Yeah.
So, good news for the tight ends because the tight end position needs these guys to come back. All right, Lions secondary they need a little bit of courage because both of their starting corners, I think, could possibly out this week. Tough matchup for them. Let's pair this with Xavier going to be worthy ? Because I thought he was done for the game on Monday night when he went down.
He came back like a play later.
I know, it was crazy. Yeah. As someone who needed him, I just assumed I was done. I was still done, but he at least got one catch later. But you got Rice coming back. What's your take on this line or this Chiefs passing offense?
First off, did I say Johnson instead of Jennings when I was talking about Juwan Jennings? People in the chat are confusing me. But if I did, I'm sorry. I meant Juwan Jennings for the last one. I think that if we don't see Xavier Worthy this week, we'll see Tyquan Thornton is someone who I liked anyway as like a deep sleeper, just because the Lions have given up the highest rate of 20+ air yard throws. Talked about that on the sleeper show this week. And obviously Tyquan Thornton would then see even more work and more routes if Xavier Worthy wasn't there. Hollywood Brown becomes someone that you should be interested in too. Because his route share would go up. His route share has not been that great. It's really weird though. Like I got multiple people hitting me up because Sleeper apparently had Worthy listed as doubtful for this week, like on Thursday, which that was not announced anywhere. But I guess they had other players listed as doubtful who also were not listed as doubtful, because doubtful is like, I mean, you get
probably
like
not going to play.
Yeah, you get like 3% of doubtful, like 5% of doubtful players actually play. And so, if he is out though, I do think Tyquan Thornton's a pretty interesting play against this beat up Lions defense.
Okay. We have the Waller bump. Apparently he's going to be seeing even more snaps this week. What I thought 3 weeks ago he was done, never playing football again. He gets 2 touchdowns. He gets 1 touch. The guy has, I think, as many touchdowns as Trey McBride does at this point.
Yeah, I mean, since the beginning of last year, right? Yeah. He had a 67.5% route participation rate last week, which I don't know if is it my response to this is it possible to get much higher, right? Like hypothetically, yeah, 100% is much greater than 67.5%. But when we're talking about a veteran player like Waller, tight ends are usually not in the 90% plus range. Like, how much more can he really take on? So I'm really high on Waller. Like, I think I've been ahead of the market now. And I had him ranked as like tight end 8 rest of season. Cause I'm like, it's tight end. We're going to go for ceiling. Right. And I think the ceiling is there for him, but yeah, I mean, I'm not going to read in too much about like the route participation stuff. I think that what matters for him is the end zone targets and how much work he's going to get in the red zone.
All right, Scary Terry, still scary as far as this week. Looks like he's not going to play again. This was one of those things where people shied away from him preseason because of the holdout.
Yeah.
He's actually paid off because now he's hurt.
Yeah, I mean, but also I would argue that part of the holdout stuff is that they're not getting normal reps in camp, and so there could be injury. I mean, we've seen this happen in the past. I mean, this could just be like a correlation, not causality thing, but at the same time, it seemed like it could be something. My response to this is don't sleep on Noah Brown.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, guys, because Noah Brown's been sidelined. They haven't had a stable number 2 in that offense, and he would play that role last year. Like, that's what he was. They have Debo now, obviously. But Noah Brown could be back this week. I haven't seen the official update if he is. He practiced on Thursday, but he's had this groin injury. And so if Noah Brown plays, I think he's kind of a sleeper because Jalen Lane, don't think he's there yet if he ever gets there, but I don't think he's at least there yet. Luke McCaffrey had a really weak rookie season and has been more of a part-time guy. And Chris Moore is terrible. I mean, he is not it. Like, he's not the answer. So Noah Brown is pretty interesting. I see Gonzalo in the chat saying Noah Brown greater than Chase Brown and AJ Brown. I mean, don't tempt me to throw that hot take out there, but no,
maybe even better than the Cleveland Browns too.
Yeah. So just keep an eye on Noah Brown based on this information. And not only that, but Adam on Perspectives did not seem very optimistic about Terry McLaurin either.
All right, Stranger Things in Jacksonville. Brenton Strange just reported by Jordan Schultz, going to be out at least 5 weeks. Had a hip and a quad injury, so we know there's the IR stint. But for someone who had been playing really well, it really sucks.
Yeah, I think Hunter Long is next on that depth chart. He's someone who's kind of bounced around, was an interesting prospect. But not someone that I think we need to really worry about from a fantasy perspective. If anything, this just kind of shifts volume around, and maybe we get a little bit more to BTJ, maybe a little bit more to Travis Hunter and De'Ami Brown and so on.
All right, next we have the charged backup running backs in LA with Hampton's injury. This was the main waiver wire topic this week, but what are your thoughts on the running back situation in LA?
I think we're going to see a totally split backfield. I think Hassan Haskins gets the start and has the first shot. And so if he plays well, That's great. But Kamani Vidal, I think, has a little bit more upside, just given, he's a second-year player. I didn't mind him as a prospect. But yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting a whole lot from this Chargers backfield, aside from the fact they get Miami, and it's a good matchup. So I think in total, they might be able to produce. But long term, I'm just kind of crossing my fingers that this is just a 4-week thing for Amari and Hampton.
Today's data.
All right, let's get to today's data where you have another chart for us.
I have another fun little chart. Yeah. I mean, I talked about Tedero McMillan on the 15 transaction show as a buy this week because they get Dallas and he's a touchdown regression candidate. And I had some questions from people asking about like, who are some other touchdown regression candidates based on their yards. And this, like, anyone can do this at home. Like you can just go to Pro Football Reference or StatHead or something and just get data for all players and then calculate what or how many yards per touchdown these positions get. So like for running back, you have to do it at both rushing and receiving, obviously, and then and tally that and total them together. And then you could see, okay, based on their yardage totals, because it does correlate to touchdowns, but based on their yardage totals, this is how many touchdowns that this player should have, and this is how many touchdowns he does have. And I did that for this chart for all wideouts, tight ends, and running backs, and everyone in the green. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is, based on his yardage, is exceeding his touchdown expectation by 3.4 so far this year. Rome Odunze by 3.1, Dallas Goedert by 3, and so on and so forth. And that includes last night's game, I believe. And then, you get down to like Emeka Egbuka is exceeding by 2.1, Javonte Williams 2.1, Darren Waller 2.1. And then on the flip side, I have one more person on the flip side that I added to this chart just to add Christian McCaffrey, because I thought that was kind of interesting that he's 1.6 yards below expectation at this point because he doesn't have any rushing touchdowns. And you can look at the list, Jacoby Myers, Puka Nacua, just because he has so many yards, he should have more touchdowns. Breece Hall, though, is the number one regression candidate by far when looking at this with 3.6. He should have, based on his yardage totals, 3.6 more touchdowns than he actually has right now, because the amount of touchdowns he actually has right now is 0. So based on his yards, he should have almost 4 more touchdowns than he has.
Counting on a big Bijan comeback as well. Diggs on this chart got back to form last week as well.
Well, what's interesting is that Diggs and Tet McMillan have very similar yardage totals, which is why their numbers are identical, because neither of them scored yet. And so, both of them have a shot. I just rounded up. So technically Diggs is even more of a yards to touchdowns regression candidate. But I'm very excited about Stephon Diggs because I thought he looked the part. He looked really good this past week. Really, the last 2 weeks, he's looked good. His targets per route run has been out of control. You just got to hope that he's kind of back. And I think if he is back, if he plays like he did last week, he's a wide receiver 2 in fantasy rest of season, if he's able to maintain that.
The late round main event.
All right, let's get to people that you like more than consensus this week. Starting at quarterback, you've got the cover boy, Dak Prescott.
Yeah, really, if you look across all positions, I don't have that much variation this week, which is kind of annoying. I like whenever I'm way different than what other rankers are doing, but consensus says Dak at QB8. I have him at QB6, so it's not that much different. He's been top 6 in 3 of his last 4. He's playing out of his mind. They have a 26.5 point implied team total. It's an average opponent against Carolina by adjusted fantasy points allowed. But Dak to me is just playing too well, which is why I have him ranked where I have him ranked.
Okay, for running back, we already talked about it, but Rico Dowdle.
This might change by rankers with the official
news.
news that Chuba is going to be out. So, to be fair, like this could be different. But look, Rico is in just the absolute best spot imaginable. They're at home. He's got a revenge game. And for the record, I don't really care about revenge games. It's just fun to talk about. There might be a little bit motivation. Who knows?
Yeah.
We saw it with Stephon Diggs certainly played out of his mind last week.
Yeah, not Saquon Barkley last night, though.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have confirmation bias a lot with revenge game type stuff. But last week, Rico Dowdle, 85% running back rush share, 15% target share. He was a bell cow. Dallas, terrible defense. They've been the second best matchup for running backs by adjusted points allowed. They're allowing over 14 running back rush yards to opposing teams per game over expected. I just think Rico's going to be a bell cow, and very rarely are you going to get a reasonable 23-point implied team total for a team like Carolina.
All right, so moving to receiver, same team, Ted McMillan, or to Teteroa McMillan.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been high on him this week. I have him as a top 10 wideout. Consensus does not. I talked about him on 15 transactions. This could be the week because Dallas has been horrible against wide receivers. I talked about this on the 10 Trends episode, but Dallas against wide receivers is the worst matchup, or best, depending on which frame, which perspective you're coming from. But Dallas against wide receivers, they've been horrible more than any other position across all teams in fantasy football. And Tet gets them this week. He's a regression candidate. Like I said, he should have 2 to 3 touchdowns. We talked about that just a second ago. But also, like, if you look at PFF's expected touchdowns formula, he should have like 2.5. He has 0. Dallas this season, Kitchen, is allowing 86.5 passing yards above expected, which is just like mind-blowing. So what that number is doing, just to reiterate what I've talked about before, it's looking at who Dallas has played, looking at their average passing yards per game, and then looking at how many passing yards per game Dallas has given up, right? And the difference there is that when they face Dallas, they are on average throwing for 86.5 more yards than their season-long average. And so we could see more from Bryce Young this week, hopefully, and that will, in turn, help Teteroa McMillan.
I am so glad that this is not week 8, because week 8, I think, is National Tight End Week.
Oh.
It is not tight end week, and you don't have anybody for tight end. Tight end,
no.
I mean, we got some rough spots this week.
I'm chalk city at tight end this week, unfortunately.
All right, so let's move on to some bold predictions. Last week, 1 for 1 or 1 and 1 for a bold prediction.
Yeah, I'll take it. Look, if because last week I had Rico as a top 8 running back last week.
Yes.
Yeah, should have been bolder than that. You know what? I got to shout out James COO as well. Perspectives guest last week. He came because I always ask Perspectives guests at the end of the episode to give one bold take for that upcoming week. His take was that Stephon Diggs was going to be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, and he was like the wide receiver 4. If only he would have just said top 5, he would have been in the green. But props to Co for calling that out and being on top of that prediction. The first one for me is Juwan Jennings completely flipping perception. I know that I've talked about this like 3 times now on the show this week, so people are probably thinking it. And so I could be wrong. Like, of course I can be wrong. And if I'm wrong, apologies in advance, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
But I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking truthfully about how I feel about this situation.
You never speak from the heart. It's crazy.
Never. I'm only, usually I'm just kind of being
a robot
about stuff. Yeah.
Right.
But with Jennings this week, Jennings in general, I've seen people talk about their league mates dropping Juwan Jennings. No one wants anything to do with Juwan Jennings. And I don't understand why. He's been injured. He's been hurt, right? Like, we have the reason as to why he's not producing. He has been hurt. And the one game this year where he had more than an 80% route share, which a healthy Juwan Jennings is going to be over that mark pretty much every week. Okay. The one game where he scored 19.9 PPR points in that game. Now you get Ricky Pearsall out. You have George Kittle out. You only have Kendrick Bourne and Demarcus Robinson competing for touches at wide receiver and Jake Tunges at tight end. Juwan Jennings is the best pass catcher on that team this week by a decent margin. I would not be surprised in a plus matchup if Juwan Jennings comes through with a good game and people are like, oh yeah, back in July, we were drafting him in the 7th round consistently, in the 6th round consistently. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's bizarre to me that this is going on with Juwan Jennings. Add him if he's out there. If I'm wrong, I'll be wrong. Okay. But I think this is a very correct process look at this situation.
I'm always proud whenever people spell Juwan Jennings the right way. So
Why, did I spell it wrong?
No, you did.
Okay.
It's Auan. And I always want to do the opposite. But yeah, we had some predictions before the season even started about Jennings and Pearsall being the 1 and 2, but Jennings being the 1, and
I liked at the beginning of the offseason, I liked Jennings more than Pearsall, and then it switched a little bit because of the injury and the holdout and all that kind of stuff. And Pearsall, just thinking about his situation more, I had both of them as targets in the draft. I liked both Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings this year because I still think that there's a chance that they see pretty high target shares in that offense. And it's a good offense that we want to invest in, and it's just, like I said, it's just been weird that we're coming off a game where Kendrick Bourne caught 10 balls or however many balls he caught and had 142 yards. And we're like, nah, against Tampa Bay, why would we want the starting wide receiver who's back? Why? The guy that we were drafted in round 6 3 months ago.
Yeah. The only thing that is derailing this is the potential shower narrative of the Patriots.
Yes.
Patriots history with Jones and Bourne. All right, moving on. You got Justin Fields, S and the B for your bold prediction number 2.
I think Justin Fields is going to S the B this week. Yeah. And that means that he's not going to have a good performance. So if you look at Denver against quarterbacks this year, I have a table here. They played Cam Ward, Daniel Jones, Justin Herbert, Jake Browning, and Jalen Hurts. All of those quarterbacks finished with 6 or fewer rushing yards, which is kind of crazy because when you look at their points per game against Denver via the ground only, all of them, including Jalen Hurts, scored 0.6 points or fewer other than Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones got a goal line touchdown against them. So he scored 6.6. He had 6 rushing yards. Outside of that game against Denver, okay, so Cam Ward is averaging 0.9 points per game with his legs, so 9 yards per game because he hasn't scored a touchdown on the ground. Daniel Jones, 4.4, and he did score 6.6, but that's just because of the touchdown. You get Justin Herbert, 6.6 points against the Broncos via the ground, 3.7 in all other games. Jake Browning, 0.4 against the Broncos, 1.7 in all other games. Jalen Hurts, 0.3, and then 10.5 in all other games. So I think this Denver defense is going to be able to stop Justin Fields and what he does on the ground, which is going to force him to sit in the pocket, which could be a very, very bad thing. So I think if Fields works this week, it's probably going to be because he breaks off one big, I don't think it's going to be a consistent 12-yard chunk at a time like we've seen the last couple of weeks from Fields. Although Fields against Miami had that long one. But I think you need that from Fields for him to really pay off this week.
Some garbage time Fields. All right. Let's look ahead to the waiver wire. Again, I think it's just one of the most valuable parts of this show. You have Luther Burden. I noticed Luther Burden was picked up in our late round guillotine league last night. This is before the Q&A. So I think that Burden is definitely a guy that we're hoping comes back strong after the bye.
Yeah, I mean, out of the bye, you gotta think that a team that's not been the cleanest to start the year maybe shifts things and changes things up. They like Olamide Zaccheaus, but what if they use Luther Burden a little bit more? And it's the exact same logic with Colston Loveland, who's healthy, seemingly, that he's going to go this week. And so what if they use Colston Loveland more than they did pre-bye? So that's why I like Burden and Loveland, and then Roschon is in there because Kyle Monunga is banged up. So just keep an eye on that situation. Sterling Shepard and Tez Johnson, talked about them a little bit with the Chris Godwin injury. I think Shepard's going to run more routes, but Tez has the matchup. So don't be surprised if we see, even there's a possibility we just see more production from Tez Johnson versus Sterling Shepard this week. Blake Corum is on here because people like to be reactive to whatever. I mean, right now, Cam Scattaboo is like an RB3 to people in fantasy football, like overall, right? Like people are reactive of what goes on the most recent, the most recent games from these guys. And there's a chance I have Blake Corum and Justice Hill listed here that game script goes the way we talked about, and Blake Corum gets a lot more work than he usually does. And people are like, oh yeah, that's right. Like Blake Corum was involved in this offense before he fumbled a toss and then dropped the ball, in that game against the 49ers last week. So Blake Corum, kind of interesting as a deep play. Justice Hill.
You should put Blake Corum next to Amari DiMercado.
Yeah, so I do have Amari DiMercado here, which I think people would be surprised at. But the reason I have him listed there is that we didn't see a real negative game script for Arizona, even though they lost. Like it wasn't a negative game script for them against Tennessee. And we could this week as they get Indianapolis. And I do think Amari DiMercado is their 2-minute back still, and he will play that role. And there's also this like narrative in the back of my head, of like we're going to be a team and we're going to
Gannon, Rich, just like giving back to him after punching him last week.
Like, are we going to be shocked if like there's going to be a post-game interview where they talk to DiMercado and he like did something great or like had like a game-winning touchdown or something, and they like, they're interviewing him and he's like, yeah, this is the beauty of sports, and you can blah 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 blah.
It's what I needed,
right. That's like, do I think that that's the likely outcome? No, but I do think from a football logic perspective, DiMercado is the third down back, the 2-minute back, and they have a tougher matchup this week against Indianapolis. So different game script means DiMercado could be more involved. Ryan Flanoy, some people say Flournoy, but I listened to pronunciations for about 20 minutes the other day, and it's Flanoy. I remember prospecting him, by the way, but I never had to say his name on a podcast. So I never, and all the announcers say it differently. So finally I just dug deep, listened to him say it, and it was Flanoy. So we're going Ryan Flanoy. What if he gets the same amount of work that he did last week? Yada, yada. Jalen Coker could be back this week.
I almost put him in the news for that. But yeah, we're high on the Panthers this week, aren't we?
I mean, you have to be. Dallas has
almost
been
like they're playing against a totally terrible passing defense.
Yeah, look if they S the B themselves, like I think process wise it makes sense because Dallas's defense has been horrible. Jalen Coker, if he does well, or if he gets work rather, he could do well because the matchups there. Emmanuel Wilson, backup for Josh Jacobs. He's been sort of the primary backup for them, and they get a team against Cincinnati. And I think maybe people would realize like, oh, this is the handcuff to have. Like there's that possibility, and they might want to add him. Noah Brown, we talked about, he could be back this week, and he would be the number 2. And then 2 streaming defenses. We get the Jets against the Panthers next week. It's rough next week, streaming defense. That's why these picks aren't like the best. But the Patriots, if they're still out there, people are going to be using them this week because they have a decent matchup. But they get the Titans next week. No offense to Kitchen, but they're a great team to stream against. No. And then the Jets get the Panthers next week. So and they're at home, so they could be a decent matchup too. I hope they're at home. I just realized I said that, and I hope it's not like an overseas game or something like that, and I screwed it up again.
The Panthers and the Jets, or the Patriots and Titans?
The Panthers and the Jets.
Patriots and Titans definitely aren't. I could see.
Okay. The Jets are it's a 1:00 game. It's in New York. I'm like you
have PTSD from that.
I'm scarred from that experience. Yeah.
All right. We do have one London game. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, the London game is the Broncos and Jets this week. So that's the game in London. So the Jets not at home. They're in London.
Right.
One of the games available to talk or to put in the quad box. Obviously, we talked about the Cowboys and Panthers.
You go first. You're going first this week for the quad box picks.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go Cowboys and Panthers.
You're going Cowboys, Panthers? You're just going with the highest total?
Yeah. Well, not just that. It's what we've already talked about.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of fantasy implications in this game.
A lot of fantasy implications. Yeah. Even like the whole Dak being the cover boy.
Yeah.
But even when you think about the Cowboys, the Eagles losing last night to the Giants, and if you look at the Eagles' schedule, it's brutal.
Yeah, the Cowboys could do something.
The Cowboys could do something. They need a pass rusher is what they need.
Yeah.
If only they had one. But yeah, I think that that this game is going to be fun. We've mentioned it. It's probably the game we have mentioned the most. So why not have it on here? So let's go Cowboys and Panthers.
I'm gonna go 49ers and Buccaneers as my first pick for the quad box here. Because I think it's another good game in general with a lot of fantasy implications, a lot of fantasy players, and we get to see our boy Emeka Egbuka and some interesting sleepers this week. You know, Tez Johnson. We get to see if Juwan Jennings or Kendrick Bourne get to thrive and get a lot of volume. So I'm excited to see what goes down in that game.
Okay, I just realized we don't have the primetime games on this. So we've got Detroit, Kansas City, Buffalo, Atlanta, Chicago, and Washington.
Okay. I probably would have not gone with that one, but because I didn't think about the Chiefs Lions, but that's okay. It's okay.
I'll let you go Chiefs Lions.
Okay, we'll go Chiefs Lions with 49ers Bucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go Lions v Chiefs with that one. And then you get the last pick.
2 Monday night games. Buffalo, Atlanta, yeah, whatever, should be fun. But give me this Chicago at Washington game.
Ooh, a rematch of the Hail Mary from last year.
Yes. And coming out of the bye, I want Caleb Williams to go nuts. I want Bill Krosky-Merritt to get 200 yards from scrimmage. Like, give me just a lot of fantasy points and a lot of craziness in the last game of the week.
Do we have any updates from Redacted on his July take of or June take of if Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is relevant in fantasy football, I will steal the Declaration of Independence, is what he said.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he should do something because, like, all right, we don't want him to commit a crime.
I think he's planning. He said he's planning something.
There should be some sort of
the FBI is going to scrub the Discord in like 4 months whenever the Declaration of Independence is missing. Yeah.
What if it did go missing, and then terrible timing. All right, so Chicago. I know this formatting gets you. But
I just did it. I just did random formatting just because I'm leaning into the bit now.
Bears versus Commanders. All right. There you go. Those are our 4 games. Should be fun. Should be another fun week. I don't know how last week could have topped, or how this week could have topped last week for you, or can top last week for you, but I hope it does in some way, JJ.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, last week was more of just like a hilarious things coming together kind of week with that one matchup that I talked about where I started absolute junk and got the W, thanks to Javonte Williams. And then where I'll never forget if I end up like going back to back in that league during that draft where I punted RB2. And then I sent you a text and I said, low key, Javonte Williams really fits this build. Yeah. That'd be great. It'd be a great W for me.
Especially after the ribbing that you took.
I took a lot of crap for drafting Javonte Williams. Yes.
And people don't understand. It's not just taking crap. It's like when you are in a room full of just opinions, basically.
Yeah, these are some of the biggest fantasy football analysts on the planet.
Right. And and everyone has their own opinions. And when those opinions are like shooting arrows at you, you want to be right.
Yeah.
So
it scared me a little bit. I didn't get enough of Javonte after that just because they scared me.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will do it for the show, JJ. Any final thoughts you have?
I have no final thoughts. I hope that everyone has a great weekend and that you crush your fantasy football leagues and that Emeka Egbuka continues the streak of being amazing at football.
Okay, I thought you would want to say something about collusions in trades.
You can listen to Mailbag to hear me yell about that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Listen to a heartfelt JJ Mailbag. Listen to the Perspectives episode. If you missed it, obviously we've got the late round Patreon where it's just a great community. Even if people are pressing you while you are working to make a fantasy basketball pick for a league that you joined them. You helped by joining. So appreciate you all, though, whether you are leaving comments during the show or after the show or listening on a Saturday morning while mowing the yard. We appreciate you all, and we hope you have a great Week 6. This has been the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, sponsored by DraftKings.